Number 3, street design. Because these areas are designed for people instead of cars, everything is designed to be walkable to the point that you could let your child wander or bike around the city and feel safe that they wouldn't get hit by a car. This is great for their own sense of autonomy and physical health, as it gives them more choices and places to go. Many kids are isolated to their yard or cul-de-sac and have little self-reliance. These days, leaving your kid alone to wander is considered neglect, thanks to perceived stranger danger, but mostly due to the very dangerous streets designed for cars, not people. An ideal street would be slower for cars with traffic calming measures, and the lights and intersections would favor cyclists and pedestrians, and people wouldn't be mad because they're also cyclists and pedestrians. There would be as many walking and cycling areas as car areas, isolated from each other, and using up much less room as needed for a large car. Many cities with grid patterns could shut down every fourth street to just walking and cycling and emergency vehicles, and drivers wouldn't notice the difference because so many people that originally drove would feel safe walking or biking, while they currently rightly feel very unsafe. These pedestrian-centric streets would have a speed limit, and a designed psychological speed limit of 20 miles per hour for small cars and 15 miles per hour for trucks and SUVs, if they need to be there for parking and delivery only, as pedestrian deaths drop significantly to near zero at these speeds. The faster the cars get, the more pedestrian fatalities rise. Back in the day, 25 miles an hour was a safe speed for people and cars to interact, but as trucks and SUVs keep getting bigger to protect passengers, this speed keeps killing more pedestrians because they have so much more mass, that if you get hit by one of them, your chances of living drops from 60% to around 1%. These special cycle and pedestrian streets would also be available for emergency vehicles, as people on bikes or on foot can get out of the way of emergency vehicles much faster than cars can, increasing response time in the Netherlands, who drive on their bike corridors by 30 seconds, which is the difference between life and death. And if you're worried about people with mobility problems, don't. Not just bikes discussed in detail how well Dutch bike corridors work, and people with disabilities are able to drive small electric vehicles that can't go faster than bikes and still get people where they need to go, often faster than the US because traffic jams aren't nearly a thing. And they don't need to be big or expensive or pass safety inspections because they aren't ever going to be driven in traffic with big cars that can crush them. Number 4, commuting design. So we've discussed how green urban design helps people shorten their trips. How about if you want to commute or live in the city? Commuting is a massive greenhouse gas emitter that we all just treat as normal, mostly caused by the fact that it's more affordable and just nicer to live further away from your work than nearby. If it's just due to lifestyle choice, such as you love living in a certain area or you work in one part of the city and your partner works in another, there should always be non-car options that are nearly as quick and convenient as owning a car. Each region will have its own special needs, and a subway, bus, light rail, or trolley will all depend on which needs they can fill by geography. Prior to the car taking over, even small towns had train stations connecting them to other small towns, so you could easily live in a small town and not need a car. Designing a nationwide standard of train and rail system like China would drop the price of rail drastically, but instead we have to reinvent the wheel every time we change or upgrade our mass transit systems. These public transit options also need to come very frequently, so that if you miss one bus, you can just wait 5 to 15 minutes for the next one instead of being completely screwed and have to call for an expensive Uber. These public transit options also need to not be crowded and have more luxurious options such as tables for working and the ability to distance in the time of a pandemic. If there are enough of them coming by, that won't be an issue. It would make people view riding the bus as a joy as opposed to what it is so often now in many cities, a crowded experience that only mostly poor people use. A developed country is not a place where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation. Gustav Petro. However, many don't commute because they want to, but because they can't afford not to. When the cost of living near where you work is too high, commuting is your only option. One option is one used in Germany where you're paid for your commute time. That is work you are doing for them, as you wouldn't be doing that drive for any other reason. An even better idea would be replacing the minimum wage with a living wage based on cost of living by county and tied to inflation. This would allow people to be able to afford to live near where they work, no matter where they work. You can buy about the same in Manhattan for $25 as you can in Indianapolis for $11. This would drive companies to push for policies that would lower the cost of living so they wouldn't have to pay as much, such as good mass transit and affordable high-quality government housing, which was a term associated with quality back in the 1950s until the 1960s when government housing was used to force segregation and low-quality overcrowded housing for minorities, thanks to loan availability, neighborhood destruction, and redlining. This system would also give incentives for companies to move back into small towns, where cost of living is drastically lower, and they would need to pay less. However, they did cause the cost of living to rise by moving their company or factory there. The residents wouldn't see any change in their purchasing power and would be on par with people in the cities. The government currently has very detailed cost of living estimates for their military and government job positions to adjust based on where you're located. With good public transit and bike corridors, you could pay as much as 30% of what you're paying now to own a car, and your tax dollars would spend as low as 10% of what it pays for infrastructure if you don't use a car. Lastly, one of the reasons for commutes comes down to our schools and the way that they are funded. No other nation has property taxes paying for schools based on location. In most other nations, public schools get equal pay for equal student, so the difference between a good and a bad school is minimal. In the US, in areas where property taxes are low because of poverty, they can barely afford air conditioning or any enriching classes like art because they just don't have the funds, while public schools in rich areas are hemorrhaging money to the point that they have to find new things to spend money on. Switching the school funding model would ensure people don't have to live far away from their job to get the same education for their kids. This will help literally everyone, no matter who you are, as education levels in area correlates directly with crime levels, another major fear that people have around cities. This is the Solarpunk ideal for human living, not a skyscraper hellscape, but a convenient, easy, high quality, and affordable place to live, work, and enjoy, with plenty of green space you don't have to care for, safe streets where you don't have to worry about dying in, and places where you will interact with people, not forced on top of each other out of desperation, which leads to many having the bad ideas people have in their mind around cities and urban living. Using these principles, many cities could easily fit 5 times the population in the same space and feel less crowded because of all the green space and so much less noise pollution and traffic because cities aren't loud, cars are. Next, we will discuss the dystopian anti-solarpunk system we currently have that we all view as normal, and then in the final videos, we will discuss the long complex methods needed to cause change to get people aware of the trap they're in and to move us to a possible and even better solarpunk future. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you wish to be a part of this project, want to create a logo for us, or want your Solarpunk art displayed discussing any of our main points of focus, please send everything to solarpunkusa@proton.me. There is also a Patreon link for my main channel if you like what I'm doing. For the first section involving community building, this channel will be run directly by myself. After that point, I hope to make this a collaborative project with many people involved, including voice, information, and editing to make this a robust channel that can spread and grow.